dressed in suits, raincoats, and eye masks made of lead. No wounds. No struggle. No answers. On the afternoon of August 20, 1966, a young boy was flying a kite on Morro do Vintam Hill, in Niterói, a city across the bay from Rio de Janeiro. Somewhere below him, in the grass, he spotted something that didn't belong. He climbed down to look closer and found two bodies lying next to each other, partly covered by the grass around them. He reported what he'd seen to the authorities. Getting to the site turned out to be its own problem. The hill's terrain was difficult enough that police and firefighters struggled to climb it, and a small group of them did not actually reach the bodies until the day after the boy first found them. What they found, once they got there, was oddly composed for a death scene. Both men wore formal suits. Over those suits, they wore waterproof coats. And over their eyes, each man wore a mask made of lead. There was no sign of major trauma on either body, and nothing at the scene suggested a struggle had taken place. Beside them lay an empty water bottle and a packet containing 2 wet towels. Investigators also recovered a small notebook, and inside it was a short set of handwritten instructions, 1630 estar no local determinado. 1830 injuria capsules, apos efito protegea meteus agada sinal mascara, 1630 be at the specified location. 1830 ingest capsules, after the effect protect metals await signal mask. The 2 men were identified as Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel José Viana, electronics technicians from Campos dos Goitacazes, a town several kilometers northeast of Rio de Janeiro city. Working backward from that identification, police reconstructed what looked like a plausible account of the men's final days. On August 17, 3 days before their bodies were discovered, Cruz and Viana left Campos dos Goitacazes, telling people around them that they intended to buy materials for work. From there they boarded a bus bound for Niterói, arriving at 2:30 in the afternoon. Receipts and witness accounts filled in what came next. The 2 men bought waterproof coats at a shop in Niterói, the same style of coat later found on their bodies, and they bought a bottle of water at a local bar. The waitress who served them was interviewed afterward and described Miguel as very nervous, adding that he kept checking his watch, as though he were tracking time toward something specific. That sighting at the bar is the last point at which either man is known to have been seen alive. It is presumed, though not confirmed by any witness, that they went directly from the bar to the hillside where they were later found. The physical evidence at the scene ran in a strange direction. Instead of pointing toward what killed Cruz and Viana, it seemed to rule things out one at a time. No obvious injuries were found on either body at the scene. None turned up later either, when the autopsy was finally performed weeks after the discovery. There were no signs consistent with a beating, a fall, or a fight. Whatever ended their lives on that hillside left no visible mark on either man. The delay in the autopsy became its own obstacle. The coroner's office was overloaded with casework at the time, and by the time Cruz and Viana's bodies were finally examined, real time had passed, enough that their internal organs had decomposed past the point of reliable testing. Because of that delay, the one test that might have settled the central question of the case, a screening for toxic substances, was never carried out at all. If Cruz and Viana had ingested something that killed them, whether that was poison, a narcotic, or a pharmaceutical, no laboratory ever confirmed it, and none ever will. What investigators had instead was a trail of ordinary purchases: 2 waterproof coats bought from a shop, 1 bottle of water bought from a bar, a notebook full of instructions that read like a private schedule. None of it explained why 2 electronics technicians from Campos dos Goitacazes had climbed a hill in Niterói, put on lead masks, and waited. Interviews with the men's circle of acquaintances added a piece that shifted how the whole case was read. A friend of Cruz and Viana told police that the 2 men were part of a group who described themselves as scientific spiritualists. That single detail reframed everything else recovered at the scene. The notebooks talk of capsules, of a signal, and of protecting metals, and no longer read like the notes of 2 men in danger from someone else. It read like the notes of two men preparing themselves for something they expected to happen on their own terms, at a specific time they had written down in advance. Investigators also looked into what waited for them at home in Campos dos Goitacazes. According to the friend's account and materials later found among the men's belongings, there was literature concerning spirits, along with materials connected to constructing masks. None of that told police what, specifically, Cruz and Viana believed was going to happen on that hill on the evening of August 17th. It only confirmed that whatever it was, they had planned for it well before they ever boarded the bus to Niterói. The detail that keeps this case alive, decades later, is the material of the masks themselves. Lead is heavy, dull, and completely opaque, an unusual choice if you only wanted to block dust or wind, but a logical one if you wanted to block out light entirely, including light bright enough to pass through something thinner. Investigators combined that detail with the scientific spiritualist testimony and arrived at a specific theory, that Cruz and Viana believed they were about to encounter something, whether that was extraterrestrials or spirits the source does not settle, and that they expected the encounter to come with a burst of blinding light. Under that theory, the masks weren't meant to hide the men's identities or restrain them. They were built to protect their eyes from something the two men thought was coming. The same theory carries the notebook's other line forward. If Cruz and Viana expected a moment involving intense light, the instructions to ingest capsules and then protect metals and await signal read less like a code and more like a private ritual's timetable. Take something at 1830, put the masks on once it took effect, and wait. Under this account, the two men didn't die from an attack, an accident, or a struggle with anyone else. They died from a shared overdose, taken deliberately, sitting side by side on a hillside outside Niterói, waiting for a signal that, as far as any surviving record shows, either never came or arrived in a form no one else was there to see. None of this is stated in the case record as confirmed fact. It's a reconstruction, built from a friend's second-hand testimony, from mask-making materials and literature about spirits later found in the men's homes, and from the clipped, appointment-like language of the notebook itself. It holds together. It also can't be tested, because the one piece of evidence that could have proven or ruled out a drug overdose, the men's own decomposed organs, was already unusable by the time anyone got around to examining them. What's left, then, is a scene full of physical objects and almost no physical proof. 2 coats. 1 empty water bottle. A packet with 2 wet towels. A notebook with a schedule written in it. 2 lead masks. All of it describes what Cruz and Viana did with their final hours. None of it proves what actually stopped their hearts. No arrest was ever made in connection with the deaths of Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel José Viana, and no official cause of death was ever established. The case is still catalogued among Brazil's unresolved deaths, carrying the name it picked up almost as soon as the bodies were found on the hillside, the lead masks case. What remains is a short, fixed sequence of facts, each one traceable back to Campos dos Goitacazes and the 3 days that followed. 2 men left home on August 17, 1966, telling people they were going to buy materials for work. They rode a bus into Niterói, arriving at 2:30 in the afternoon. They bought waterproof coats at a shop in town and a bottle of water at a local bar, where a waitress noticed one of them was anxious and kept glancing at his watch. 3 days later, a boy flying a kite found them lying together on Vintam Hill, dressed in suits and coats, lead masks over their eyes, a notebook nearby describing a schedule for capsules, metals, and a signal. The spiritualist theory is the explanation most closely tied to the physical evidence, the shape of the masks, the friend's testimony, the materials found at the men's homes, and it has become the version of the story most often repeated. But it remains a theory, resting on testimony and inference rather than forensic confirmation, because the forensic evidence that might have settled the question outright never survived long enough to be tested at all. Every documented fact of the case still fits in a single frame: 2 men on a hillside outside Niterói, lead over their eyes, waiting for something that was never seen to arrive.